mouse is working. Okay. Are we live? Are we good? Okay. I've been told that these screens, they don't project very well, especially if we don't turn them on. I don't think they're even on. So we might want to get that taken care of. I don't know who our technical people are here. Dave, don't touch anything. Can we just hit power buttons up here? Are we good? Or are you guys going to turn these on for us? I've been told they don't show very well, so if you want to, you guys in the back probably aren't going to be able to see what's on these slides. If you want to move up, you're welcome to. While we're waiting for projectors, I'll introduce myself, the obligatory introduction. My name is Matt Ermston. I am, as of about 2 weeks ago, the chief evangelist at Storagecraft. How many of you, just by show of hands, are familiar with Storagecraft as a company? Awesome. I probably should have said, how many of you, by show of hands, are not familiar with Storagecraft as a company? One. Welcome to the party. We're glad you're here. The objective that I have been tasked with today is to talk about the state of, usually when I ask that question about Storagecraft and nobody raised their hands, I then go into the obligatory, we're Storagecraft, here's what we do, here's who we are. I'm going to be able to skip all that and hope that I now have enough material to cover the rest of the time because I just lost about 8 minutes of presentation. Let me see if we can't get projected up here. Whoops. And we'll see if this is going to work out for us. I have determined that I would use new technology. And I don't know if this is super new or not. It's new to me. I wanted to kind of get away from, part of the thing we're going to talk about today is we're going to kind of work our way backwards from a storage standpoint and kind of talk about some historical things and then work our way forward kind of into the at least near distant future. As far as storage and backup goes, and so I thought it would make sense for me to try to utilize some technology I'd never used before, and there's lots of tips in this Prezi stuff that talk about things that you should do and shouldn't do to keep your audience from becoming, getting motion sickness and dizziness, and I've never used it before, so I apologize beforehand if, as we're doing this presentation, you start to get queasy, and I hope that it doesn't get too bad. But let me just kind of jump in. So the state of the backup industry and where we're going, and keep in mind that this kind of has a little bit of leaning towards Storagecraft vision and kind of where we see things going. I've done a lot of research in preparing for this so that it didn't feel like it was a big Storagecraft pitch. I don't ever like going to a keynote presentation. Obviously, when you come to these types of things, you know that you're going to go to some breakout sessions and that sort of thing, and you're going to hear about a lot of new product and that sort of thing. But I always feel like a keynote presentation should stick to topic and not be a market thing. But you're going to have to indulge me a little bit as we get down towards the end because it really does tie into the presentation, some of the things that we're working on at Storagecraft. And I just want to, especially since we're kind of in a room full of Storagecraft folks, kind of give you a feel for where we're headed as a company. So let's first, before we move forward, we're going to move back a little bit. So we're going to back up a little bit and just talk historically about storage and backup and archive and that sort of thing. And we're going to go way back and talk about this thing. Is anybody familiar with this? I usually have a little contest with people when I'm doing this type of thing, and the first person to raise their hand and tell me what this is, I give them a t-shirt or something. But this is what's referred to as the Phaistos disk. It was discovered off the island of Crete, and it has been dated between 1800 and 1600 BC, and is at this point known as the first movable type. Now, no one knows what that says. It's obviously some piece of information. I have tried myself to interpret it, and as best I can tell, it says something that's really important to keep your data, and there's got to be an easier way to do this. But that thing is double-sided. They suspect that it was actual movable type, rotated. They were stamping stuff out as the thing moved around. And so we go way back. At some point, somebody in history recognized that it's important for us to store information and to store data, at least as early as between the 1800 to 1600 BC time frame. From there, we're going to make a really big jump from the Phaistos disk and talk a little bit about punch cards. Now, punch card technology, we were talking about this. I've got a coworker who tells me that his grandma, her job was to slide punch cards into a machine. And as I look around at this audience, I'm thinking maybe there are some people who have used punch cards in their careers. Okay, I didn't want to date anybody. I apologize. So punch cards predate computing. It goes way back to when they used punch card technology to kind of use the weavers in making material and that sort of thing, and what colors to use and how to weave and what patterns to use. Punch cards were used to do that. And it's been used from 1725 up till about the mid-70s. And quite honestly, that technology is really, in some instances today, still being used. A lot of work, obviously, was involved when we were back having to use punch cards to both store our data, to run our programs, and then having to duplicate those to have a backup of the punch card. A very time-consuming, painful process. Interesting note, those of you anybody here born in the 80s? Oh, okay. So punch cards, I don't know if you guys knew about punch cards or not, but they did exist. And one DVD today is the equivalent of about 90 million punch cards. So when you think about the data that sits on a DVD, to equal that, you'd have to create 90 million punch cards. Moving forward, magnetic tape. Most of us are familiar with this. It was introduced by IBM in the 50s. Basically, it can hold as much data as about 10,000 punch cards could. And for the longest time, it has been a very popular way of storing data and is still used today, very popular. So we're talking about a 60-plus-year-old technology that is still being used today in a lot of cases to back up and to store data. What's the natural progression then as we move from tape now to what? Disk, thank you. Floppy disk, actually. I jumped ahead one. Floppy disk came along. It's interesting, floppy disk, that technology kind of came and went. I don't know how many of you remember installing a Windows operating system with your stack of floppies, floppy, next floppy, next floppy, next floppy. Was great for moving data around. And interestingly enough, from the 70s to 90s, people were actually using this as their backup. We talked to a guy, we actually had a partner of ours, an MSP, that we went down. He was in Southern California, and they would go into, one of the reasons why they were talking to us was because they wanted to kind of standardize their backup practice in their service offering. And he told us that he had more than one customer who was still backing up to floppy. And he basically had told them, there's no way we're doing this. You understand that there's a lot easier way today than backing up your files to floppy disk and putting them in your bag and taking them home with you. And that was a year ago. And they were still, I don't even know where you'd go buy floppies today. Walmart maybe carries them still, I don't know. But really, we've kind of seen that go away, especially with the advent of flash drives and USB and all that kind of good stuff. Next up was hard disk. Again, hard disk introduced back in the mid-50s. The original hard drive that was created could hold 5 megabytes worth of data. They reached the 1 gigabyte capacity in 1980, and that drive that reached 1 gigabyte weighed 550 pounds. So imagine trying to work with that thing as you went along, and I'm sure that was a big deal, at a cost of $81,000 to $142,000 for a gigabyte worth of data on a drive that is about the size of a Volkswagen. You can see it there in the picture. In the early 90s, it actually then at that point started becoming a more realistic alternative to tape to be used for backup. My favorite part about those big 50-pound drives is that you get to wear that cool white jumpsuit thing to operate them. I don't know what that had to do with it. We don't really have to do that today. I don't know if anybody else is wearing white jumpsuits to work in the labs, but so we're going to move from there. So that's kind of where we've come from. Now, I'm not going to be able in the time that we're together to go into every detail about every technology that has either in one way or the other affected storage and backup, but that's kind of a brief overview as to where we've come from and where we are today. Still have a lot of disk being used. People are now beginning to realize that hard drive really is an alternative to using tape. And as we move forward, especially when we start talking about SSDs and as the price point per gigabyte starts to drop on SSDs, we're going to start to see that have a huge effect on backup, how we do our backups, and the speed with which we're able to do those backups and those restores. So, what are the industry experts telling us today about the backup industry? Most of this information is from our friends over at Gartner. So today, or 2011, they were talking it as a $3.8 billion industry. Anticipate that by 2016, we will move into the $5.2 billion mark. Now that is purely backup. That's a huge industry, a huge opportunity, especially as you guys start to grow your businesses and grow your services and go out and offer backup as a part of those services, which most of you are already doing. Just know that business is going to grow, and there are going to be opportunities for you to go in and move, and we'll show some of those points that even kind of accentuate that even more. When you add disaster recovery on top of backup, which is, they're not the same thing. We've got backup and we've got disaster recovery. When you add disaster recovery on top of backup, that is projected to be more than a $39 to $40 billion industry as we move into 2015. So huge opportunities are coming as we take our services, and a part of those being backup and disaster recovery, and move forward in the future. By 2014, a couple interesting statistics here. By 2014, 80% of the market will choose disk-based backup. So those folks who are out using tape today are already starting to look at alternatives and are trying to move off of that, what is kind of considered an archaic technology, and moving to disk because it is faster and it's becoming more and more affordable to be able to do that. By 2015, 45% of large enterprises will move off of tape. By 2015, 30% will change backup vendors. It's interesting, and these are things that you guys, I mean, there's got to be some flags that are floating around somewhere, red flags that are popping up all over the place. The reason, as Gartner went out and did this research, the reason that was given why customers were looking to move and to change backup vendors, technology was one of the reasons. They did want to move to a newer technology. But the biggest reason that they gave as to why they wanted to move and change backup vendors was frustration with the vendor. They were not comfortable with the vendor from whether it was a technology standpoint or a support standpoint or a pricing standpoint. Those are the reasons that were given. It wasn't well, we just want to get off a tape and move to something else. So we've got a lot of people out there today who are currently frustrated with their backup vendor and are looking to move. Which is just, again, creating more opportunity for you as MSPs and resellers of backup products. By 2014, 30% of these are mid-sized to large businesses will move or will actually adopt a recovery as a service offering. And we'll talk a little bit more about recovery as a service and how that kind of relates to backup solutions and the solution that we happen to offer and solutions that you should be looking for in the market, because people are going to be looking, businesses are looking for that type of an offering, recovery as a service. So that's kind of what we're being told today, that's kind of the state of the backup industry today as it grows as an industry. Backup, most of us know backup is not the sexy service that we go out and sell to people. It's one of those deals that's like selling insurance. You know you have to have it. You hope you never have to use it. But it's something that businesses are using every day on a daily basis, and it needs to be there. And it's not one that people get super excited about, but as a part of a service offering, helping them understand the importance of having that backup there on the day that they need it is critical to help them understand the need. All right. So let's talk about some technology trends. This first one that I'm going to show you, you're going to say, well, is that really a trend? And when you talk to the folks at Gartner about virtualization and where they kind of view virtualization today, they will tell you it is a mature technology, and we all know that. You probably have a lot of your customers who have started that process of migrating to virtualization or maybe already have. They will tell you that it is a mature technology, and like I said, it is a mature technology. However, what Gartner also will tell you is that it is a disruptive technology in that today, right now, IT departments all over the world and all over the country are making decisions as to how they're going to migrate and how they're going to do that process and when's it going to happen and how much is it going to cost and is it really worth doing. And they're in process of making those decisions today. And that really does have effect on the backup industry in that when you start that migration process, the first thing that you want to make sure is in place are good backups. So again, another opportunity is you're out talking to potential new customers, asking them about the decisions that they're making today about their migration from physical to virtual and ways that you can help them in that process and making it easier for them to make that jump from physical to virtual. So it is a mature technology, but is one that's also very disruptive. Another technology, cloud computing. Last year, the keynote that I gave last year here, doesn't seem like a year ago, but here we are, was all about the state of the cloud and where we're at with the cloud. I don't know how many of you were here when we gave that presentation, but some things have changed around cloud computing. And if you remember last year, when we looked at the hype cycle that Gartner had put out for 2011, we at that point, from a cloud computing standpoint, were in the point or the peak of inflated expectations. And we talked a little bit about what that meant. In that there were a lot of people who were, there's a lot of publicity, there's a lot of hype around cloud. There were people who were kind of trying it out, and most people weren't having a whole lot of success. But the technology was there, it wasn't quite viable yet. And we had some early adopters, and we had some vendors that were out there who were starting to kind of, introduce cloud solutions. But there wasn't a whole lot of success with those. 2012, I hope I don't get dizzy. I'll fall off the stage here. 2012, we've now moved into what Gartner calls the trough of disillusionment, which for us as a vendor, what that means is that we now have an opportunity. If you look at how Gartner defines what the trough of disillusionment is, where they say interest wanes as experiments and implementations fail to deliver. That's great. The important part to us as a vendor is where it says producers of the technology shake out or fail. Investments continue only if the surviving providers improve their products to the satisfaction of early adopters. So as a vendor, the way that we kind of view where we're at with the cloud right now is that we have an opportunity to help improve that technology to a point to where our partners and our customers actually see it now as a viable solution that they can go out and offer to their customers. And we'll get to a point, and I'll show you kind of how we have taken advantage of that opportunity. As a vendor, we kind of sat back and watched and waited to see where everything was going, and we didn't want to be a part of that peak of inflated expectations period while there was a lot of failure happening. We were able to sit back and learn a lot as we watched some of these other vendors and other companies start trying to implement and talk about the cloud and what it really meant. And we feel like it's been to our advantage to be able to sit back and kind of watch that process unfold and to get us to where we're at now with the cloud. But certainly is a technology that is affecting backup and disaster recovery today. Now, this just in, last year, if you remember, if you were here, one of the quotes that I used in that keynote was from Larry Ellison, where he said, maybe I'm an idiot, but I have no idea what anyone is talking about. What is it? When he's taught in reference to the cloud, it's complete gibberish, it's insane. When is this idiocy going to stop? That was last year. I don't know how many of you read the latest news. They had their Oracle Open World big show. Larry Ellison got up. And so apparently the cloud is official now because Larry Ellison said so at the Oracle Open World presentation. 4 major initiatives around the cloud. It's all cloud, 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 cloud. So apparently, I don't know if he was an idiot last year and all of a sudden he is not insane anymore, but he's decided that the cloud is where Oracle wants to be. And so that's certainly saying a lot when you've got a major organization like Oracle. If I sound bitter about Larry Ellison, it's probably a little true. He owns an island in Hawaii. I kind of wish I did. All right, so some technology continuing on with our technology trends. Moving from cloud computing, the next one that we're talking about, and you're probably hearing some talk here at the show, is big data. And what does that really mean? Well, in a nutshell, what big data is today is a big buzzword. It's what cloud was last year. Last year we talked about how marketing people had latched on to cloud, and they had their cloud spray, and everything all of a sudden said cloud in front of it. Well, this year, as a matter of fact, if we go back to the hype cycle, Gartner's hype cycle, you can see big data is just now moving into the peak of inflated expectations. And so people are trying to figure out what that's all about. The bottom line is when you talk about big data, and what that means is that we are producing 2.5 quintillion bytes of data every day. That's a lot of information. As a matter of fact, 90%, they estimate that 90% of the world's data was generated in the last 2 years. And it's not slowing down. And somebody somewhere along the lines decided, you know, there's a lot of value in that data if we can just figure out a way to tap into it and use that information, analyze that information, and use it to our benefit as major organizations and companies to check efficiencies and those sorts of things. So we're still kind of waiting to see how that flushes out. But the bottom line, again, is that data sets are growing. And when data sets grow, that affects the backup and disaster recovery industry. Because that data, whether we're talking about gigabytes or terabytes or petabytes, that data still has to be backed up. And there has to be a way to manage those backups efficiently and quickly so that you know that you've got, when the time comes and you need to restore, that you're going to have the ability to do that. The question is still about recovery time objectives and how quickly can I, after a failure, have that machine back up and running. So that big data is another one that we need to kind of keep an eye on. And whether or not there's software companies that come out and are able to capitalize on the fact that there's all this data floating around out there, that's for them to figure out. As a backup company and as backup vendors, we need to figure out how do we manage all of that data and these data sets as they continue to grow and grow and grow, and be able to manage that realistically. So a couple of trends that we want to look at from a backup and disaster recovery standpoint. Obviously, operating system support. We have been, from the inception, a Windows backup company. That is no longer something that's viable. Most businesses today are growing out their organizations, and in most cases, that includes some other operating system other than Windows. And so as backup vendors start to look at trends that are happening, even in small businesses now, it's so easy just to go out and drop a Linux box in place to use either as a firewall or something along those lines. That operating system support is huge, and that's one that has to be watched. Big data, again, lots of data, larger volumes. We need to figure out how to manage those realistically and be able to continue to back those up quickly and efficiently, and to be able to restore them when the time comes. Virtualization, we talked about. And really, it's not so much about, backing up virtual machines is really not that big of a deal. Where the play is in the virtual world, as more and more organizations move to 100% virtualized, it's all now about integration. Integration into the management pieces that are used to manage those virtual environments, and allowing you folks and IT administrators the ability to manage from within that framework all those backups as they're happening. And being able to do that within that virtualized environment itself instead of having to move out somewhere else to do that. Again, bringing everything into a single console, a single view for both your virtualization management as well as including your backup management. Tools and analytics, again, big data is all about analytics. For us, it's really important that as we start managing more and more data, more and more operating systems, both physical and virtual, as well as machines that are moving into the cloud, it's important that we as a backup company provide you with the tools that you need to be able to manage across that disparate organization where they've got physical, they've got virtual, they may have machines that are running in the cloud, and you need to know where they're all at all times and whether or not those backups are happening when you need them to. And again, I want to be able to very quickly, once I recognize that there's a problem with a machine or a site, be able to have that site or that machine back up running as quickly as possible. And a part of that is about having the ability to be alerted when those things are happening and knowing in near real time that you've got a problem so that you can quickly resolve that for your customer. Management, again, kind of ties back into tools and analytics. I think gone are the days where the technology has kind of taken us to a point where we've had to move away from everybody being comfortable with the fact that I'm going to do this operation with this console, and I'm going to do this operation with this console, and this operation with this console. There has to be kind of a merging of tools. And so for us, a lot of that is about integration with other vendors, with RMM companies, and with virtual companies. A lot of that integration work, we've started those processes, and it's important, I think, that as you look around at some of those vendors, the RMM guys or the virtual guys, you'll start to see backup vendors start kind of patching into those platforms as well. It really has gotten to a point to where it's almost unacceptable to have to bounce from one console to another, to another, to another, to another. Just making your life and the life of IT administrators that much more complicated. There needs to be this integration that takes place between those solutions. Cloud, again, we're kind of at that point now to where we as vendors and as users of the cloud have the opportunity to define what the cloud is. We started that process a year ago. We've seen vendors, cloud vendors, kind of come and go as they've tried to push their solutions onto the market, in some cases without a great deal of success. And then we've been able to sit back now and kind of define really what the cloud needs to be. And we're probably going to, Dave, why don't you come up? This is Dave McConkey, the talented, and your wife, well, never mind. Your mom probably thinks you're lovely. I was going to say lovely, but that probably doesn't work. Dave is one of our product managers who has helped. We want to just do a quick demo kind of to show you our kind of vision of what we think the cloud should be when it comes to backup and disaster recovery. For the longest time, we knew that there were opportunities for us as a company to either partner with somebody or to kind of go out and build out our own data centers and just move our backup files to the cloud and know that they were there. And quite honestly, for some vendor or for some customers, that was enough. I just need to know that it's offsite and that it's there. And if something were to happen, I know that I can go and get it. You want to bounce over to, are we dead in the water? Oh, that would be awesome. The internet? Open up another browser and see if you can get there. While Dave's trying to figure that out, that's why I had Dave come up, because now I can just say, it's Dave's problem. He can work on it. The decision that we made, and I think that you're going to start seeing this more and more, again, as we define what we think the cloud should be, whether it's from us or some other vendor, is that it's not enough just to be able to have your data sitting in the cloud, but you need to actually be able to reach into the cloud and do something with that data once it's there. When you think about a disaster scenario where you've had a fire or a flood or whatever it might be, you have lost your site, the idea of having to go now out to the cloud somewhere and saying, okay, I need my data back. They then have to somehow get that data back to you. And then the process of doing that restore, which can be a very time-consuming process, begins once the data actually arrives on site and you're able to bring things back up. All the while, you're down. Your business is down. When you talk about the cost of downtime, if you have to go out and procure new machines, find a new building, whatever it might be, there's a lot of time that's being consumed there that you're not operating as a business. And so for us, a real cloud solution would allow the ability to do a couple of things. One, to be able to archive, because quite honestly, there are companies out there, small businesses, that can afford to be down for 3 or 4 days, and it's not that big of a deal for them. So they can have the ability to just archive their data out to the cloud. The other would be the ability to go out and look at one of those points in times, one of your backups that's been replicated to the cloud, and simply just do a file and folder restore directly from the cloud. What do we got going on back here, Dave? Yeah, I'm getting a little concerned. And then finally, and I'm about out of words to say while I'm stalling for you, Dave. Finally, clearly the most important thing is the ability to continue operating as a business while all that other stuff is happening in the background, going out and to procure new hardware or build out a virtual environment to restore into, or having to go and secure a new building and start that process. Ideally, while all of that is happening, you want to continue running as an organization. And so the other option that we provide in the cloud solution is the ability to actually have those points in time sitting in the cloud, to be able to reach into the cloud and very quickly spin them up as virtual machines so that you can continue operating as a business while you go out and do that work to recover from whatever disaster it was that you may have experienced. Just in time, Dave, just in time. So what we're looking at here, kinda, is our MSP portal. Most of you are probably familiar with it, probably not this version of the portal. But basically from our MSP portal, you can log into your cloud account. You're looking at some machines that I have been backing up that are now replicating to the cloud. Those of you who are familiar with our image manager tool, when we release the service, it's just as simple as selecting the Storagecraft cloud as a replication target. And then we start replicating our backup files from our local repository off to the cloud. And once they get there, now we have the ability to do a couple of things. And Dave, if you jump over to devices, once these devices have been replicated to the cloud, we talked about the ability to do a simple file and folder restore. And so if we just go ahead and select that MATU laptop test, and then go over to File and Folders. Select a recovery point. Type in my password, which is blah, 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 blah. Password is the password. Dave knows that. Basically what happens at this point now, again, it's not just about having the data sitting there and hoping that in the event that we have a problem, we can call our cloud provider and say, I need you to send my data. Or we go out and say, I need you to start downloading all of my data from the cloud. But rather, we can go out and reach out into the cloud and actually do something and not rely on us as a vendor to do that for you, but you have the ability to go out and do that. In a second, we're going to see, working off this little hotspot's kind of painful. We'll see if we can get it up. Those of you who are Storagecraft folks, we've been actually talking about cloud. I think we did a pre-announcement in, I keep asking you, Laura, what was it? April? June? May? I knew I was close. We did a pre-announcement in May, and we talked about some release time frames, fall time frame, and we're still anxious to be able to hit that. But for those of you who may have heard that announcement, hopefully you have been anxiously anticipating the release of this. We're actually going into beta next week and anticipate being able to hit that date. Dave, if this is not going to catch up with us, we can jump over to the virtualization piece and kind of, there we go. So now basically from here we're looking at a point in time that has been replicated to the cloud. If you scroll down to that HIR logs folder, we'll just grab a really small file so we don't have to wait forever. Grab that first one or second one, just download that. There we go. We'll do a quick compression and a download and pull that file down locally. Now this could certainly be, in the case of maybe a Hyper-V machine that's been replicated, you could just simply go out and grab the whole VHD, pull the VHD back down, use that as your virtual disk to create a virtual machine. And use that file and folder restore as a part of that restore process to actually restore a whole virtual environment. Just go out and grab those files that you need to rebuild those machines, and you can do that way. It's as simple as that. Dave, if you want to bounce back to, did you actually open that file? Yes. And it worked. We did how many did we do today? 6? 6 pushes. Yeah, we did 6 code pushes today, so we came in here kind of crossing our fingers, hoping that everything was going to work. Our guys are continually updating and making changes they need. Virtualization, I'd mentioned that. Again, we select a recovery point, and I wanted to quickly, because I can tell you, I don't know how much of you guys are actually in your businesses have marketing people, but we have marketing people, and this is kind of stuff that they love. And you will see, and you will be able to tell your customers, we can virtualize in the cloud in seconds. And you'll see us market that in seconds. And we can do that in seconds. There's always a little bit of something on the other side, but we'll talk about that in a second. So Dave, when you're ready, Dave has selected the number of CPUs he wants on this virtual machine, the amount of RAM. He could select, if he wanted to, the type of networking that he wants to use on that virtual machine. And I'm going to time him so that you guys know it's not just spin. Here we go. You ready, Dave? Start. I actually started ahead of him. His reactions are not cat-like like mine. So we are in process now of taking that image file. Stop. 13 seconds. The VM has been created. Okay? So we can create virtual machines in the cloud in seconds, 13 seconds in this case to be exact. Dave's going to type in his password. Now, there's a difference between creating the VM and actually booting the VM up. That takes a little bit of time. As we all know, machines or virtual machines have to boot up as well. Go ahead and hit that start VM, 13, 14, 15. I'm hoping to still keep this within seconds, so that our marketing people are comfortable using that word term seconds. We're at 23. It always works so much better when you're prepping for these things. We're still within seconds. Still within seconds. There we go. Stop. 37 seconds total. Go ahead and hit Control-Alt-Delete there, Dave. So we actually now have a running virtual machine in the cloud. I had Dave hit Control-Alt-Delete so that when we get there, we don't have to remember the keystrokes, and we actually use VirtualBox on the back end. I don't remember the keystrokes for Control-Alt-Delete, so I had him hit it here. Go ahead and hit download your RDP link and open that. There we go. So we now have, this is a Windows 8 box that is now booting up in the cloud in seconds. And that is our vision of what a good cloud disaster recovery solution should be. This is not, calling us and saying, hey, we're down, I got to get my machines up, or, can you send me all my files? This now allows you the ability to reach into the cloud, spin those machines up. Now, there's a couple little things that you would need to do. Once you have those machines all back up and running, you can come back in, and we allow you to come in and create virtual private networks that those machines now sit behind. A couple of options to have reserved IP addresses and those sorts of things. But for the most part, this is all controlled by you. It's not something that you're going to have to call our support people and have them help you with. Now, the process, of course, of bringing those machines back once you have recovered from this disaster is to basically, at that point, call us and say, we're ready. We need to get everything back local now. You can come online through the portal, request what we call a BMR drive. It gets shipped to you. You start the process of restoring. Now, all the while, you can actually allow those virtual machines to continue to run in the cloud until the drive is shipped. You have it. You plug it in. At that point, we go back out to the cloud, check for any deltas between the time that we created that BMR drive and the time that it took us to ship. We pull those down, and we restore it to your physical or to your virtual environment. And that is the ability to now reach into the cloud and do something, as opposed to taking your data, turning it over to some cloud provider, and saying, I hope that you guys take care of it, and that when I need you, I can call you and you'll help me through the process of either getting all my data back, or in some cases, walking through the process of maybe doing some sort of a restore or something like that in the cloud. Hey, what happened? Dave hasn't figured out Windows 8 yet. I hadn't either, quite honestly. I think if we, there we go. So here's my login screen. That will actually get us into, if I remember correctly, So there you have it, running in the cloud. Now, the question comes up periodically, well, once my machines are up there, why don't I just leave them and you guys can host them for me? And that question arises quite oftenly. And I want all of you, especially since most of you are Storagecraft folks, to understand that we don't consider ourselves a cloud company. We consider ourselves a backup and disaster recovery company who has a cloud offering. And that will always be our main focus. If we decided we wanted to become a hosting company, we would have to completely kind of redesign the way our cloud looks on the back end, and we're not interested in doing that. There are a lot of other companies out there that do that, and we want to continue to focus on backup and disaster recovery and offering you the best solutions that we can possibly offer. We don't need to do that at this point. So Dave, thanks. Thank you. And I'll just quickly sum up. So obviously there are a lot of technologies that are coming. I'd mentioned SSD. We've already started to look at some of the possibilities that we will have as a company with SSD, and obviously the price point per gig is just going to continue to drop on that technology, and once it's gotten to a point that we feel like we can go to the market with some viable solutions based on SSD, we will start having those discussions and making those announcements. But that's a huge one. Big data is another one for us, and whether you're talking about the S in SMB, their data sets are going to continue to grow as well. And so a big focus for us is on managing those data sets and making sure that the restore capability that we're providing you today we'll be able to continue to provide as we kind of move forward in the future, and those data sets just continue to grow and grow and grow. But certainly there are these trends that are happening that we as a company and you all need to be aware of from a backup standpoint, especially when it comes to data set size and the amount of data that we're generating today. So we have a couple minutes. Questions? Yep.
How do we get around that with solutions like the one you just showed us?
His question is about security and making sure that their data remains in country. Our data centers are in country. We actually have two. We're actually mirroring data centers from the West Coast and the East Coast. They're all SA. What is that, Dave? SAS. It's not SAS anymore. It's SSAE 16 is the new one that they're throwing around. The big problem for us as a company, a global company, is taking this globally. Here in the States, it's easy. We're a US-based company. Our data centers are based in the US. Your data's not going to go anywhere. The hard part for us as a company is when we go global, how do we make sure that their data stays in country? And obviously, we're going to have to go and do a little work with them. Data centers in country as well and make that offering there. Question over here.
When you send the restore hard drives back, you have to put on dissimilar hardware?
It can be dissimilar hardware. It does not have to be the same hardware. It can be, as a matter of fact, if they were physical machines originally and you want to restore back to a virtual environment because you see that as an opportunity to kind of move from physical to virtual, you can restore into virtual machines as well. His question was, do I have to restore back to the same hardware? No, you do not. Other questions? We're going into beta next week, and it's kind of I'd love to say that it's an open beta, but when we start talking about moving actual data into the cloud, the data center says, hey, all this data is coming in, and we need to start billing them for this. So we've kind of hand-selected some folks so that we don't get a whole lot of data up there as we're just testing. But we plan a 3-week beta, and then we'll hand it over to our marketing folks and let them decide when they actually want to release and go to market. Soon, hopefully. I say as the marketing people are sitting right here. Yes?
When you DR one server into the cloud, do you have the ability for that one server to tie back into the client's remaining network so that it's a smooth communications back and forth between the cloud server
That's a good question. And I believe I've got one of our guys back here nodding yes. Are you nodding yes, that's a good question, or yes, you can pull that off? Yes, we can pull it off. Okay. So the question was, if I have one server that I have sitting up in the cloud, and I want to make it so that that machine actually looks as though it's sitting on my local network, can we do that seamlessly? And I'm being told from Dr. Bender back here. Other questions? Another question. Yep. So the question, it's a good question. The question is, a lot of times when you're replicating data off-site, especially if you're locally doing incremental backups, you have to seed the base image, and you have to ship that out to the data center, out to the cloud, where it's going to go to pre-seed the cloud. And then in the meantime, you're now getting this queue of files that are building up, and you end up playing catch-up. And if you've got a slower link, that catch-up can be pretty painful. We do actually offer a seed drive that you can use. If you've got, in our case, in the case of Shadow Protect, if you've got a base image plus 50 incrementals, when you plug that USB drive in, it will take that base plus the 50 incrementals, create a snapshot. That is what will get put on the drive. You ship it back. In the meantime, we will immediately start replicating new incrementals as they come in to the cloud. So that you don't have to play catch up. We will then drop that, once the drive arrives, we'll drop the contents of that drive onto the seed or into the cloud, and those that were being replicated while we were waiting for the drive are just sitting and waiting to be processed as a part of that whole job. So that lag time, you're kind of losing, the lag time kind of goes away. Okay. Well, just to kind of wrap up, again, we've got a lot going on as a company, and certainly there's a lot going on in the industry when it comes to the technologies that are affecting backup and disaster recovery, and there's growing need for backup and disaster recovery as well as archiving, as more and more legislation is passed that is forcing our customers and end users to have to hang on to that data. So it's important, one, that we understand the trends. Two, we understand the offerings that are out there that are available to us. So as you have more questions, come and stop by and visit us at the booth or talk to our blue shirts. Yes, I always hesitate. When Kurosh raises his hand, I always hesitate to say, yes, Kurosh.
Kurosh from Storagecraft Sales. Since product management does not want to tell us the pricing, I was wondering maybe if you could tell us a little bit about what we should expect.
Usually I would answer that question by saying, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. I'm going to tell Kurosh I'm just going to have to kill him for even bringing it up in this platform. As I have explained to Kurosh, our sales guy, over and over and over again, we have what we feel is very, very aggressive pricing when it comes to the cloud. We have been sensitive to that, that we know who our market is, and we need to be able to provide the solution at a price point that makes sense for them. We also have made the decision as a company that what we don't want to do is, as we've pre-announced the solution and have started doing demos and more people are finding out what we're doing, what we don't want to do is give those who have cloud offerings today the ability to look at our pricing and say, well, we're going to just readjust before they even go to market. And so we will announce pricing on the day that we release the solution. And I can tell you that it is, like I said, we have 3 tiers, very aggressive when it comes to pricing and making sure that it's at a price point that makes sense for our current target customer, which is your customers. And we feel like you'll be pleased when you see the pricing.
These data centers you're using, are they your own or are they?
No, that was another decision that we made early on, was that, we're software guys, we're not data center experts, and we don't want to become data center experts. And so we've gone out and found some really good data centers. I can tell you that the one that's on the West Coast is within miles of the brand new NSA data center that they're building in Utah. They're excellent facilities, and those guys know what they're doing. And we didn't want to go into that business. It just didn't make sense because, again, it kind of affects pricing if we've got to throw up walls and machines and do all that kind of stuff. So, no, they're not our data centers. All right. Well, do we have another question? One more.
One of the tenants you're supposed to deploy when you do backups is to test your backup solution. How do you do that?
In the cloud?
No, I mean, what solution? If I said, if I did this and I want to test whether or not the backup is really going to work once something disastrous happens, how do you propose to do that with your solution?
So there's a couple of ways. I would propose, first of all, you have a local image repository. That at any point in time, you can go to one of those backups of one of your machines that you're backing up and virtual boot it, and just do a right-click virtual boot, spin that backup up, and it will either run or it won't. And if it runs, we know that we can restore from that image at any given time. We also have the ability just to even go in and mount images, and if you're able to mount those images and browse around and look at files, it's the likelihood that you're going to be able to restore those. In the cloud, obviously, you can come in at any point in time into the cloud and spin up a machine and know that those offsite files are going to spin up when you need them to as well. And we don't, again, as those VMs are running in the cloud, there's no extra charge for that. So we would almost encourage you to go in periodically and spin them up and just make sure that they're running, and even include that as a part of your service offering to your customer and say, every quarter or every 6 months, we're going to run through your disaster recovery plan and show you that in the event that you experience a disaster, we'll be able to have you back up and running within that recovery time objective that you've set with them. Critical that you're doing that on a regular basis. Well, thanks for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. If you have questions, stop by the booth or visit with one of us in our Storagecraft shirts. Appreciate it.